Hi everyone, happy Lunar New Year. Well, I've got a review to dish out that might leave you feeling pumped or maybe not so much. Netflix's 2023 animation, Blue Eye Samurai, has been getting some serious love. People are calling it cool AF, especially loving the badass female lead action scene. Many comments rave about its portrayal of female power, especially highlighting Asian girl power. Set in Japan's Edo period, they've thrown in a curveball with Japan going all isolationist. Our lead, Mizu, faces major discrimination and bullying for being mixed race. Growing up, she rocks the dude disguise, turning into a revenge-seeking samurai out to make those white dudes who corrupted Japan with opium and insulted her mom pay. Given that our lead is a rare Asian female protagonist with an Asian background, making white folks the big bads, lots of comments are cheering for Blue Eye Samurai for smashing racial stereotypes and giving Asian girls a shout-out. Now, before we dive in, I gotta fess up to my stance on Blue Eye Samurai to set the tone for this review video. As I watched Blue Eye Samurai, the phrase that kept popping into my head was, "It's a trap!" Seriously, trap. The production is top-notch, but man, it is beautifully crafted, but has unintentionally revealed some dangerous creative tendencies. Orientalism, yellow fever, sexualization, stereotyping, and diminution of female characters, blah blah, etc. Alrighty, don't fret. I'm about to break down why Blue Eye Samurai left me feeling let down in 3 points. Okay, let's roll. First off, women dressed as men is a theme I personally adore. As Chinese, we're familiar with stories like Mulan and Attire. Mulan's tale, thanks to Disney, is probably familiar to most. And as for Attire, in the most widely known film adaptation of the opera, her cross-dressing to pursue education stems from her thirst for knowledge. She and her lover Liang Shanbo hit it off because of their mutual support for women's education. Then there are the female writers of the Ming and Qing dynasties in China. Since women of that era lacked rights to engage in politics or military affairs, many female authors expressed their aspirations by writing about a female protagonist who cross-dresses. They produced many excellent works, such as Wu Zheo's Xiaoying/The Image in Disguise and Chen Duansheng's Zaishenjiwan/Destiny of Rebirth. By disguising themselves as men, these women escaped the injustices that would have befallen them as females. They were separated from their fellow women by nothing more than a false, artificial, shaky clothes, yet they enjoyed vastly different social treatment. And they were fully aware of this fact. This could vividly exposes the structural gender discrimination of a patriarchal society. In the scene of the first episode, we see a contrast between the female lead dressed as a man and the heavily made-up courtesans being surrounded by men. This caught my attention, but sadly, it was short-lived. Mizu's cross-dressing transforms her into an incomplete man, allowing her to accomplish a revenge feat deemed impossible for women. Yet, her exposed female body is still treated as an exotic object to please the white male audience. Whether it's the courtesans' bodies or Princess Akemi's body, they are all displayed on the big screen for male gaze. And these gazes extend to Mizu's body once she removes her male disguise. A seemingly innocent and humorous line from the chubby sidekick Ringo, referring to Mizu as Peaches, links the female lead's body to that of the courtesans, ironically affirming that they are ultimately women being gazed at and scrutinized. Blue Eye Samurai provides viewers with an innocent peeking spot through the perspective of a seemingly harmless male character. From the initial gender reveal scene to the bizarre plot of Mizu being covered in scriptures while forging a sword with undivided attention. The most ironic part is that Mizu can't even complete this action independently and must rely on male assistance. And this male character doesn't even have real hands. Oh my, if this were satire, I'd give it a standing ovation for its spot-on symbolism. Alas, it's merely an unwitting mirror reflecting our oh-so-serious reality. And would we even have such scene if the lead were a guy? Of course not, because when it comes to bearing it all, there's a stark contrast in how we treat male and female nudity. For dudes, it's all chill, just another day in the buff, but for gals, it's like they're on display at a peep show. Someone might pipe up, isn't this scene about Mizu finally embracing her womanhood, shedding the disguise for that whole unity of self and sword spiel? Well, she hasn't completely switched back to feminine attire, has she? She still needs the privileges and conveniences that come with a male identity. Even symbolically and literally, she relies on male assistance. So her whole self-acceptance shtick feels like a bit of a muddle, just a nude sideshow, really. But wait, there's more cue the groans as I found myself predictably eye-rolling at the sexualization and objectification of women. The real kicker in Blue Eye Samurai is its blatant Asian fetishism. Yep, yellow fever. Asian gals are often portrayed as exotic eye candy, catering to the whims of you guessed it white folks, mostly dudes. They're like living fantasies, serving up all those dreams and desires. Take Geishas Devi become this symbol of exotic allure. These women, wearing those masks, are seen as nothing more than objects of fascination, ornaments to decorate the exotic. But behind all that glitz and glam, there are living, breathing women getting drowned out. From the military colonial history of the land to the direct colonization of Asian women's bodies, it becomes the tangible embodiment of white Orientalism. This impression and habitual creative tendency have deep historical roots and a long-lasting history, and ain't showing any signs of letting up. A very pointed portrayal of this can be seen in the all-Asian cast series, Beef, starring Ali Wong.
Thanks, Naomi.
Do you want anything to eat, or...?
We're good. She's so attentive. Is that a cultural thing, or...?
No, Jordan, it's not a cultural thing.
Blue Eye Samurai has gone all in on showcasing Asian female bodies, and even included some niche kinks for those with peculiar tastes. Plus, their desire objects are none other than Asian women, accommodating all their bizarre fantasies without a single complaint or a way out. These scenes hugged way too much screen time, especially the parts featuring Princess Akemi, whose role consists half of body display and half of portraying gender discrimination. This blatantly reveals the creator's positioning of her character, LOL. I mean, it doesn't really help with character development or plot progression. Some might say, oh, but it's because of the time period. Women back then had limited options, you know. Let me clarify, I'm critiquing the way Blue Eye Samurai is presented and its tendencies, not its historical context or story setting. Across different eras, numerous works end up stuck in the same old cliches, using the female body as a backdrop for some spicy scenes. Dancing girls, silhouettes, red lips, dim lighting. These words almost instantly evoke similar scenes in our subconscious. But hey, Arcane takes a completely different approach from Blue Eye Samurai. Let's take a look.
Sounds a bit like a trumpet.
Arcane bypasses these issues by focusing on character reactions and interactions, hinting through scenes and sound, leaving the rest to the viewer's imagination. This is also a prime example. It can be done if you're willing. Blue Eye Samurai fails to establish a truly effective female alliance from start to finish, even with such a highly favorable backdrop. You'd think it's a double girl boss drama, but nah. Mizu and Akemi's girl talks just don't hit the mark like Ringo and Taejin's bromance. The golden opportunity it missed? Mizu went to a brothel and discovered the heartwarming bond between the madam and her mute assistant. She was then assigned a mission to assassinate the poor abducted mute girl, all in the name of setting her free from her woes. Although the plot of powerless women under male oppression relying on each other may seem a bit cliché, it's better than nothing. But this plotline is short-lived again and fails to resonate with Mizu entirely. When the gangsters come knocking, all the other women, including Akemi, all vanish, leaving Mizu to steal the spotlight with an epic solo fight scene.
Legendary.
Fueled by a cocktail of painful memories and sheer badassery, making minced meat out of the bad guys. As I said before, Mizu's cross-dressing didn't offer Mizu, the creators, or the audience any deeper about gender. Instead, it transformed Mizu into an incomplete man, while also casting her as the savior of other women. Meanwhile, poor Akemi gets whisked away right under Mizu's nose, facing the fate of being sold off to her husband's family. And this doesn't even flash for more than 3 seconds in Mizu's flashback scenes. Instead, Mizu's chubby sidekick chooses to leave upon witnessing these events. This scene that echoes repeatedly in subsequent scenes, hinting at Mizu's introspection. As I watched, my mind I couldn't help but wonder how to prevent Mizu from such alienation and isolation. And you know what? I've got some ideas, and they don't involve a complete plot overhaul. Let's give it a whirl. 1. When the going got tough, the gals pulled out all the stuff, grabbing whatever was lying around, including, I don't know, maybe a kitchen sink or two. Even their special work tools. This could add a touch of slapstick to the scene, you know. They diverted the enemy, and Mizu seized the moment to take them all down in a blaze of glory. Sure, they didn't exactly duke it out themselves because yes, they didn't have the combat skills, but at least they got in on the action. Instead of just twiddling their thumbs and waiting for some dude or a special woman, aka the incomplete man, to swoop in and save the day. Now, onto another gem of irony in Blue Eye Samurai. The male character Taijen, even in a severely injured state where he can only crawl, still manages to muster up the strength to help Mizu divert enemy fire. And here we have the ladies, fit as fiddles. Why not throw in a hand too, huh? 2. Picture this. Instead of Ringo, it's Akemi who gets carted off on horseback, yelling out that crucial line that's like Mizu's personal mantra, "You're no samurai. Samurai is honorable, blah blah blah." All Ringo has to do is show a big disappointed face, toss back the bell, and walk away. This way,
Let me go! Me too!
the voices in Mizu's flashback would hit harder, wouldn't they? Akemi's storyline could go like this. Initially just seen as a trophy wife and spoils of battle to the male samurai, witnessing Mizu's badassery would make her wonder if there's more to being a samurai than meets the eye, sparking dreams of power and glory. But alas, Mizu's icy demeanor would dash those dreams faster than a hot potato. This would amp up her quest for personal power and independence, rather than just hoping for one samurai or another to come to her aid. It also lays a solid foundation for her subsequent transformation. Such an arrangement wouldn't have much impact on the overall plot, but it would empower the female characters immensely. They'd become part of the driving force, rather than perpetually sidelined bystanders. When faced with such a historically constrained and severely patriarchal background stories, or when dealing with related history or existing realities, there's a question that needs to be handled very carefully. How do we ensure that women, both individually and collectively beyond a handful of pivotal characters, retain agency and avoid being pigeonholed into the tired trope of helpless victims, especially like Blue Eye Samurai, which claims that its story background is
Learn so much about the culture.
what's the best way to respect the people who actually lived through those times? Now, in Blue Eye Samurai, let's just say it's about as accurate as a blindfolded archer trying to hit a bullseye in a hurricane. Firstly, Edo Japan never had such a tightly closed-door policy as depicted in Blue Eye Samurai. The government had legal trade relations with multiple countries from both the East and the West. Secondly, regarding the magnificent battle between cold and hot weapons in the final episode, the harsh reality is, Japan had already extensively used firearms in warfare since the Battle of Nagashino in 1575. Well, these 2 points have already shattered the foundation of Blue Eye Samurai's setting into pieces. Now let's focus on the women of that time. Sure, the historical backdrop was still patriarchal. However, compared to the severe limitations and oppressions portrayed in the show, real Edo women enjoyed more freedom. They could seek employment, sign contracts for work, and even travel alone. Rural girls could earn money with their own hands, switch jobs for better pay based on experience, even enter the inner palace, uku, as female officials, accumulate their own wealth, and gain autonomy over their lives. Hardworking women were allowed to establish their own families under their own names, passing on their surnames as the ancestors of samurai households. In rural areas, women in families had a certain degree of land inheritance rights. In big cities like Kyoto, where merchant women were married, even if the family property was inherited by the husband, they retained the right to dispose of their property. They left behind valuable records of participation in financial activities. Blue Eye Samurai could have easily set its background as a fictional alternate timeline, but its irresponsible approach could mislead those unfamiliar with real history, obscure the truly vibrant women of that era. It hides behind the veil of history to craft of a closed, backward, and ignorant Eastern nation. This creative inclination inadvertently exposes the creator's stereotypical views of East Asia. It also demonstrates an arrogant attitude of irresponsibility towards the cultures and histories of other regions. At the same time, we must be vigilant against this tendency to symbolize women as powerless victims. That way, we can truly respect the people who have lived before us and further believe in and develop our own strength. Because they and we are all living, breathing human beings. When we seriously watch the show, it's not hard to notice. Despite Blue Eye Samurai claiming to be all about patricide and vengeance for her own mom, but in reality, it's like a dad convention with countless father figures calling the shots. As for positive mom vibes, non-existent. The show showcases scenes of female oppression, but fails to explore the fundamental reasons behind this situation. Even in such an evident society of patriarchy, the culprits forcing Mizu into cross-dressing, the males and the male-dominated society remained conveniently invisible.
Soft for a boy.
Now, let's zoom in on Akemi's plotline. Once upon a time, there was a kind, beautiful princess named Akemi. She had a hint of rebellion. Lucky for her, she had a trusty male teacher by her side. Despite him and her dad both treating her like a clueless, pig.
Why do men keep comparing me to pigs?
Despite him trying to set her up with a guy she'd rather not marry. Despite him never giving her the credit she deserved, always treating her like a delicate flower destined to wilt. Despite him manipulating her life under the guise of love. In the end, the plotline still does a victory lap around his supposed. It's only through his last words that Akemi finally awakens, determined to achieve greatness on her own. Her quest for independence and spontaneity gets hijacked. She becomes the mouthpiece for her teacher dad, rather than herself. In the final episode, Akemi finally manages to rebel against her father with the help of her teacher's sword. I mean, seriously, if it was meant to be satire, it would be a brilliant symbolic image. Why not Netflix give me some cash and I'll turn Blue Eye Samurai into a full-fledged satire? And if the teacher didn't come to her rescue, she'd just have to remain trapped in prison. Perhaps become the next victim, blending into the backdrop of other helpless female victims. Now in Mizu's saga, besides the obvious role of her spiritual mentor, the blind dad, two male supporting characters, the chubby sidekick Ringo and the princess's lover Taijen, also undertake the task of guiding her when she feels lost. They propel Mizu forward with their actions and, to some extent, intrude into Mizu's personal space, becoming pillars of support for her emotions and desires. Whether it's Akemi or Mizu, there's not a single influential woman on their path. Just a parade of men, and more men. And poor Akemi? Well, her hubby becomes the pitiful pawn under mommy's thumb. These women are either damsels in distress or villainous vixens. When it comes to revenge plots, they've been a timeless tale, rewritten and dissected across cultures, from ancient days to now.
To be. Or not to be? That is a question.
Shakespeare's pondering on revenge is perhaps the most iconic. In essence, most revenge stories sprout from the soil of unfulfilled justice in the real world. Gender, class, race. All sorts of conflicts stemming from societal gaps are momentarily erased by characters indulging in vengeful violence. Revenge's completion marks the character's maturity, whether it leaves them fulfilled or empty. And it signals a new chapter in their life. The setup in Blue Eye Samurai seemed crystal clear at first. Asian woman seeking vengeance against her white dad for the injustices inflicted upon her Asian mother and herself. This setup challenges the status quo from the bottom up in our current societal framework. Because we still lack a cultural image of a woman who kills her father for her mother, and even rarely see female avengers or daughters embarking on a journey for mom. What we usually get is a father-daughter dynamic. Women seeking revenge for their kids, lovers, or dads. And countless men stepping up as saviors and leaders for women. Throughout my watch, I kept hoping that no matter how disappointing the middle may be, at least the setup would hold up. But alas, another letdown. The mother figure? Blurred. The supposed dad to be killed? Still kicking. This leaves Mizu's character tangled in a murky mess of motivation, lacking recognition, clarity, or coherence or logic. Instead of basking in the satisfaction of a mission accomplished, the audience is forced to watch Mizu's pitiful plight and utter confusion in this helpless position. It's no longer about revenge. It's not even a profound musing on the subject. It's simply because she's caught in the creator's subconscious denial logic. Seems like the creators want to convey the message. Not all of them are bad guys. Sure. Fair point, but at what cost? Mizu's rightful logic gets thrown out the window, and even she can't buy into her own motives and strength. All the pain she endures is not acknowledged by her creators. All her anger are not accepted by her creators. Contrast this with The Last of Us Part 2, which also disapproves of violent revenge. It prompts everyone to reflect on the new consequences and pain that violent revenge can bring in an empathetic way. But the underlying logic of Blue Eye Samurai is actually unconsciously exculpating Mizu's revenge target. Because, hey, not all white dudes and men are villains, so why the fuss? Chill out. As a result, she's become a powerless, anguished puppet. Especially when it comes to race, it exposes deeper issues. The discrimination against white-passing characters by the Japanese bunch doesn't exactly flip the script on racism. It's more like a confused reaction to global injustice. It's simply a basic reaction when one's own race faces violation and discrimination on a global scale. We wouldn't call a black comedian racist for throwing a few jabs at white folks. Because whether in Blue Eye Samurai or our real world, it's still a world where white people hold the advantage. Kind of like being the only man in a room full of women or the lone white person in a sea of Asians. Not exactly a reason to feel threatened. He just won't be afraid. And the grand finale, intended to be a satisfying showdown of patricidal revenge, ends up being another instance of a white dude taking charge. He doesn't even get the final chop. It morphs into yet another case of implicit male, specifically white male, leadership. Poor Mizu, she can't even get her revenge game on point. And now she's forced to journey to unfamiliar Europe under the guidance of a white man. She'll probably encounter more white saviors. Maybe she'll have an epiphany and realize not all white folks are evil. Or perhaps she'll just get swept up in the charm and forget all about her rage and pain. And don't get me started on Taijen, the former bully turned heartthrob, all thanks to some whitewashing, even developing a physical attraction with Mizu. Such plotlines are deeply offensive to true victims of bullying and racial discrimination. Add to that the terrifying colonialist remarks made by this white character earlier.
In the matter of the death of civilizations, it comes down to technology. We invented worse first. Not fair. But
This
here we
scene,
are.
this line, this portrayal, it's hard to gauge. In a nutshell, Blue Eye Samurai doesn't quite cut it as a good piece of work. But hey, if you still think it's the bee's knees after all my blabbering, okay, that's cool you do, it's totally fine. But if you're really trying hard to change my mind, well, good luck with that.
新年好，阖家团圆，心想事成。
Blue Eye Samurai isn't exactly the masterpiece it claims to be. The biggest letdown? It had the potential to shine, but it's like it tripped over its own katana. Due to various limitations in the creator's mind, it fell short of reaching the heights it could have. Anyway, in its own quirky way, Blue Eye Samurai is a reminder that even in the age of progress, we still have a long way to go. Most importantly, it highlights the fact that stories of women, especially Asian women, can only be properly told by us. So, cheers to a new year. Thanks for listening, folks, and Happy Lunar New Year!
万事如意，恭喜发财，财源滚滚！谢谢，拜拜。